Welcome, everyone. I'm Kimberly Griffin. I am the publisher and co-founder at the Mississippi Free Press. We're so happy to have you here at MFP Live. I am super excited. I have been excited about this all week long to visit with our guest, Arekia Bennett Scott, the executive director of Mississippi Votes, and Velvet Johnson, the program director. Did I say that right? Program. Okay, I got those titles right. I was like, did I cross those up? I'm so excited to talk with you all just in time for Juneteenth. I know y'all got some special stuff planned. So we're just going to jump right in. I am the only host right now. Donna is not with us this evening, but she'll be with us next week. And Asia, hopefully the wonderful Asia Wiggins, our assistant editor, is having some camera and mic issues, but hopefully she will pop in just a second because she's excited about this conversation too. So, Arekia, I think it's been a year since we talked last.
It's been a year.
Yeah. I cannot believe it. So, for those of us who were not with us the last time we talked or are unfamiliar with Mississippi Votes, tell us a little bit about your organization, how you got started, what your goals are, and what your plans are for the rest of the year.
Yeah, and I'm so grateful to have Velvet on with me tonight because I forget things, and she is an amazing comrade and will probably fill in my blanks. So good evening, everybody. What's up? My name is Arekia Bennett Scott, and I am the executive director at Mississippi Votes. Mississippi Votes was founded in 2016 by a group of college students who were trying to figure out how in the world there were 300,000 or so eligible unregistered voters across the state of Mississippi. And how we could get them engaged. And so we founded this organization, and since then we've registered about 30,000 new voters, many of them college students, many of them folks who've been formerly incarcerated, and folks really looking to be part of our electoral process, but not necessarily knowing how or where the entry point is. Mississippi Votes has been a political home to, thousands of young people across the state. We have several programs that are geared towards young people and their development. So I'm really excited to talk to y'all tonight about all the things that we've got going on, even this rain.
I know, and for those of you who are not in Central Mississippi, if one of us goes away, just know we'll try to come back. Velvet, tell me how you got started with the Mississippi Votes, because I'm sure that's an interesting story that we all want to hear.
Yes, absolutely. So in 2015, I started doing a lot of economic justice work with a Fortune 500 insurance company. And I was working with, of course, Black folks around the whole entire state. And one issue that I kept seeing was that people just needed help or assistance in trying to manage their finances, but also choosing between groceries, life insurance, or their medicine. And so when I met Arekia back in 2018, she just started being the executive director of Mississippi Votes. I applied to be her project manager, and I got the job. But before I actually started with Mississippi Votes, I was a volunteer for the organization. I just fell in love with her leadership, what she was doing with the young people, how she got everybody involved. And I just had to be in that work just to understand not only, the community that we're serving, but my community better, and actually really engaging in what they need on a day-to-day basis. But since 2018, I was a special projects officer. Then I moved to the programs manager and now the program director.
That's exciting. That's exciting. Arekia, you talked about the thousands upon thousands of people who are not registered to vote in the state of Mississippi, and how a group of college students decided that was not acceptable. What do you hear when people tell you why they're not registered to vote?
Yeah, a lot of times there are really clear gaps in voter education, right? And so you hear folks who've been formerly incarcerated who may have a drug or a possession charge, and they think I am, I can't participate in this process. And then they have a conversation with us and we're like, well, possession isn't part of the disenfranchising crimes in Mississippi, and you are eligible to vote. And here's how we can go about, making sure that you're involved this election cycle. And then young people, I think they're, Velvet and I talk about this all the time in the office with our team. Like, there's a big misconception about young people and their understanding of the political process of the electoral system. I think, folks believe that young people are apathetic towards voting or, towards anything civic wise. And that's just not the truth. I think the truth is folks aren't talking to young people in the ways that meet the need of the moment. So young people care about reproductive health. Young people care about climate justice. Young people care about economic justice. And they have a really acute understanding of their material conditions. But, there aren't enough of us involving them in our organizational day-to-day priorities and thinking of them as afterthoughts and or tokenizing their leadership and not allowing them room to grow. And, there's so much opportunity in our organization to go through our ecosystem and become, not just a staff member or a volunteer, but become board members, become, a volunteer or become something in the wide range of leading some of our youth civic engagement programmings and our high school programs, et cetera. So, I don't believe that, the public doesn't understand what's going on or that they're disengaged. I just think that the ways that we've traditionally engaged folks has, cut people out because we use this hard jargon around like what's, what civic engagement is, when really we should be talking to people about the things that they care about, the things that they talk about in their living rooms with their family members. Hey, Asia.
There's Asia
Wiggins.
I'm late. We are glad you are here. We're glad you are here. That was, I think we may have lost Arekia. So I'll go to Velvet. Velvet, we talked about, Arekia was talking about the many things that young people care about, which are the things that people care about, right? But we act like young people are some class of citizens that don't have the same hopes, concerns, worries. They're worried about money. They're worried about reproductive health. They're worried about their families. They're worried about healthcare. And so when you talk with young people and they say, I'll ask you your version of the answer of this answer. And you say, well, why aren't you registered to vote? They say, we heard now that's very interesting because I'm not sure I was completely clear about what disenfranchised people from voting. So, it feels like a blanket thing. Do you have do you have any charges? Have you been convicted of anything? It feels a little blanket. And I think that's probably by design. But Velvet, tell us a little bit about some of the things you hear from young people when they say, or any people, don't have to be young people, when you say, why aren't you registered to vote? And they say, well, I fill in that blank for me.
Just don't understand. So, and Arekia knows this, but I tell people all the time, I actually come from a community where I wasn't as civically engaged in the political process, even before coming to Mississippi Vote. So during this role, I actually figured out a lot of things, but young people just don't understand, not because they don't want to understand, but because people aren't talking to them. And the language that we use to maybe engage our peers, as far as we know, everybody on this call right now is going to go vote. We know the language to use, we know what's on the ballot, but some young people really just want you to put it into terms where they can understand fully. And so, for example, when medical marijuana was on the ballot for ballot initiative, and to say, hey, it's medical marijuana and here's the stipulations, rather we may just have to use a language where it says, hey, there's weed on the ballot. But we also have to meet young people where they are in terms of, are we going to the places that they're going to? Are we going to the block parties? Are we going to the kickbacks? Are we going to their campus? And we also, three, can't limit young people to just social media. Yes, social media is a big thing, but young people are talented just beyond Instagram and Facebook and doing TikToks. So we have to put them in positions to where, one, they're heard, and two, we can actually relate to them to where they understand fully about what's going on. Um, and also give them jobs and opportunities to where they can, I'm sorry. You want to hear me better?
We can still hear you. It's a little muffled, but we'll give you a minute to fix your setup. I think you're on mute. I'll give Asia a chance to jump in and ask Arekia a question.
Take myself off mute. There we go. Can y'all hear me okay? All right. First of all, I just love what you guys are doing. It's very important for us to have civic engagement, not just the young people, but I like the language y'all use. On your website, it says Mississippi Votes is an organization of intergenerational synergy, centering and led by young people invested in the progression of Mississippi. So tell me what it means. What is intergenerational synergy? What does that mean? And how does your organization create and cultivate that in Mississippi?
Yeah. So I come from a lot of different, I guess, movement oriented based backgrounds. So my grandparents were civic leaders in their community in Walthall County. Shout out to the home team. My and my grandparents, my uncles, my mom, and being around folks on a college campus, like Noelle Diddler, I mentioned her in my last interview, who introduced me to the Malcolm X grassroots movement, and being on the campus of Jackson State University, all that history, up and down Lynch Street, there's just so much to learn, so much to take in. And knowing that our civil rights heroes and veterans, like some of them are still among us, and going into this work with Freedom Summer in mind and really at the core essence of like who we are and what we believe, it was necessary for us to build something new, but also very necessary for us to like glean on what has been. And so some of the ways that we move aren't done on our intellect only, because our staff is, primarily young people from Mississippi, but we get a lot of encouragement and a lot of, advice from our elders. Hollis Watkins did a training for our team a few times. Frankie Adams Johnson is one of the people that we really, really admire and hold dear. And even, folks who are not that much older than us, like Nashambi Lambert or Cassandra Welchland, for example, like folks we really, really, we take the work that they've done and kind of mirror and copy their cadence a little bit, and make it our own. And just, yeah. So when we talk about synergy, we talk about we're not discarding at all what has been. We are learning from and leading from a place of understanding of what has been to cultivate something new and present and modern and relevant for our peers, with the utmost respect and reverence for what has been.
That's awesome. I love that. So with the connections you've made so far with, kind of getting a good healthy mix of the old leaders and their ways and, not rebuilding what they call reinventing the wheel, right? Like you said, you kind of standing on their shoulders, and what y'all done so far, what has been the response of the people? What do you feel is missing even as y'all are trying to, have this synergism happen between the old and the new leaders?
I think I understand your question.
Okay, so I'm asking what's challenging about it? Like, what have you come across so far that's been a challenge when you try to make this synergism happen?
Yeah, I mean, natural tension, when you are building something new, the natural tension, right? I think I learned early on from folks in the Malcolm X grassroots movement that debate unity has to be like a core principle of like how we follow through in creating and cultivating anything together as a collective, and knowing that we go in unified with this idea of alignment. We debate because we recognize that our ideas are not always, my ideas are not always the best ideas. I wanted to do voter registration on the moon, and Velvet told me that wasn't a good idea because, like, how? And gas. But, we debate that stuff out and we figure out a way to find common ground. And so for us with our elders, it's also been kind of that, right? We understand what has been, we listen to their advice, we kind of like push back on some stuff that ain't really clicking. And at the end of the day, like when we leave the meeting space and we go out and we execute this common vision, it's beautiful because we've had that moment of reflection and we've had that moment of understanding. Well, it isn't just about the individual, it's about the collective and it's about our people. And when we center that, we're able to do much more powerful, much more meaningful work. Hey, girl, hey.
Hey, it's better. Okay.
Perfect.
I always invest in Apple AirPods Pro. So
I love it. I'll give Velvet a minute to center herself. Arekia, one of the things I heard you talk about is using the right language, to you speak, know your audience. Because I feel like a lot of times when you're in these situations where you're trying to do a multi-generational coalition, you do a tokenism of what you think young people want to see, hear, listen to, and you don't ask any young people. You don't let any young people look at the flyer, the press release, listen to any message, read the text. You just send something out that doesn't make sense. And you made a very good point. Marijuana versus weed. No, that drug charge, you're not completely disenfranchised. Here's how. What are some, and I want to piggyback off what Asia was saying. What are some additional challenges that you've seen and mistakes that you've seen in organizing when people do try to create these multi-generational coalitions in language, in communication? What if you had to do a handbook today, top 5 things you should not do? You got a list.
I do. And that's so good. V, you good? You want to go? Maybe we could tag team.
Oh, yes, we could tag team. So first on my list is never go into a community assuming what the community needs. Don't try to save the community or feel or act like a savior for that community. You have to put them at the front, maybe do a community survey. And Arekia was big on teaching us that when we go into a community, before we go, we have to make connections. So we can't just pop up and say, hey, I'm here to register you to vote and tell you what's on the ballot for this election cycle and try to get your concerns out there. You have to actually form relationships with the community stakeholders. And it doesn't always have to be an elected official. Maybe it's somebody in the community that's helping other people, whether maybe it's a barber who's giving out free haircuts to the kids right before they start back to school. Maybe it's a candy lady. Maybe it's the person that mows everybody's grass for free during certain periods. So you don't have to have a person in power necessarily all the time to connect with people in the community.
Yeah, and the
candy lady not a little. It's a person.
I was just gonna
say. Hey, and see, for you to even go into the community and not know what the candy lady means, you're already 5 steps behind communicating
exactly
with the community.
So That's a great point, V. Like, if you don't know who the candy lady is, you probably don't need to be there. I think, and once you corral the people, once the people get to the place that you want them to be in, for them to hear your beautiful speech or see your nice presentation of whatever you got going on, it's very important to listen. Right? Like sometimes we go into communities with our own agenda, especially when we're talking to young people. We go in with our own agenda. We got our cute swag and we have our quota that we want to meet. We want to register 7,500 young people. And so we're going to bring them all pizza. And, just very not genuine. Young people feel that, and they feel it even more when they get to the space that you've invited them to and you don't listen to them. Right. So, we talk about this all the time. We don't want to put on events just to put on events or say that 100 and something people came to it. I want to know who we impacted. And I think, being very intentional about not just our messaging, but our delivery of the message, and going and walking into that thing knowing that I might not touch but one person, but at least that one person knows that they've been heard, they've been seen, and at the end of the day, they found a home in whatever organization you're a part of, or a friendship in you. And I think those types of relationships go a long way. That's part of what I try to teach our organizers is like, when you go out and you do voter registration, especially our young people, you go out and you do voter registration, you don't just knock on doors and say, I'm here to register you to vote. You knock on the doors and you try to make a connection. You try to be very, there's a sense of vulnerability that you have to display in order to get somebody to see themselves in what you're giving, right? So the electoral system hasn't always been a safe place for young people, for Black folks, or for people of color generally. And when you're knocking on somebody's doors or you're doing exit polling and you're asking all of these questions to a community who has otherwise been disenfranchised, there's a guard that goes up. But when you get human with somebody and you listen to somebody and they listen to you and you swap stories, it's much more meaningful to register one voter than 1,000 voters at that point, to me.
That's powerful. I love that. I love two words that you said: vulnerability and being human. That's very powerful. I think I heard recently. I don't know who said this. I don't know who to give credit to, but it stuck with me. That said they're not interested in just networking anymore. They want to build genuine connections, and I think that's what you're talking about. You guys are out here, engaging the community by actually being a part of the community, not, like you said, not just reaching a quota. And I love that. I just want to talk about your voter resources. I love the tag. I love y'all. Your layout on your page. It's just very friendly. It's to the point. It has important stuff on there. I love that. Your voter resources, like my favorite tab, because you can check your registration status. You can actually get registered. You can see who's on your ballot in your district. I love how you show details about each candidate, like you tell when the next election cycle is. You include their education, where they stand on important issues like education, abortion, environment, energy, guns, and immigration. So I love that. But I also see that you guys have voter toolkits coming soon. So just, in your expertise and, knowing what you guys want to bring into the community, what's a good example of what each voter needs in their toolkit?
Yeah. So our tools on our website are powered by Ballot Ready. So shout out to them. It's a much more broad and comprehensive tool than some of the tools that are government approved. But love them. Just wanted to say that that's where that comes from. Our voter resources, our toolkits are going to be developed, co-developed by, obviously our staff folks, but also community and our young people. And so there'll be a couple of them, right? So like, what do I need to vote on election day? How do I vote affidavit? How do I host my own voter registration drive? How do I become a campus ambassador at Mississippi Votes? How do I start my own group? So those types of 101s and how-tos. And, as we expand and as we build the organization out, we'll start doing, trainings for folks who want to be able to, make phone calls from their houses or, help us out with election protection. Shout out to One Voice, because we do election protection with them. But yeah, it'll be a one-stop shop for folks who are just curious. And, thank you for telling us our website is easy to use. I am consistently critiquing it and trying to make it more and more friendly for the everyday voter. We're working on an interactive map so that folks can, see not just who's their representative in certain congressional districts, but also how do I go deeper into the map to see who my alderman is, who's on the board of supervisors, and what in the devil does that even mean? Like, what is the board of supervisors, right? So just being able to provide that kind of civic education and bringing back our democracy classes. So after 2020, we went virtual, obviously, like everybody else. And some of the trainings that we offered our students, we started offering on Facebook Live to the community. And it was super helpful for folks to break down like what's on the ballot and what this means. And so our toolkits will have some of that information in there. It'll also have live links to our YouTube channel with some teachings from our youth civic engagement coordinators and our policy and research analysts, so that we're able to break down the legislative session as well.
That's exciting, because let me just say, I'm very civically engaged. I am still confused by chancery judge, circuit. I don't know I have to ask every election cycle. No one has since I've been voting, no one has given me a definition I can remember. I have to ask every time, what do they rule on?
You're gonna have,
and let alone alderman. I don't know what the alderman does, and I should, right? Or I feel like I should, but maybe it's not, it's not been explained well.
Some people, it's interchangeable, right? So some people say alderman, some people say councilman. It just depends on the municipality you live in, but the duties are the same. They're part of the municipal government. But we're also we do the word of the day on our social media sites. We used to do them on our website. We're going to try to get back into that as we build our communications team out. But we're just trying to make sure that all of the things that people have a question about is centrally located in the place that is, it's called Mississippi Votes. So I should be able to go to MississippiVotes.com or .org. Sorry, that's misinformation. MSVotes.org to find all the things that I'm looking for. And that's the goal.
I'm sure you, the two of you, Velvet and Arekia, have seen our consistent monitoring of polling places that we've done on our website. And this most recent primary, we found 70 precincts had moved statewide. Maybe a little bit more than 70, but at least 70. And that doesn't sound like a big number for a state, but I legit voted at the same place for a decade. Like, it never moved. I cannot imagine having 20 minutes to vote. Nobody's told you that your precinct has moved, because Mississippi has the most restricted voting time, one of the most restricted voting timelines and ways to vote. So it's not like you only have one day. That's all you got. And when you talk about one of the things you mentioned, and I don't know if this, because I want you to say a little bit more about it. One of you says voter protection. Is that what you said? What is that? Talk about that. Velvet, I think it's up to you.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I need glasses. So, right, voter protection. So in 2020, we targeted a certain number of the most problematic precincts, and we actually had staff members there, and we did exit polling, and also was on site to make sure everybody's experience with voting was smooth. If they had questions, they could always come to us. There's also, of course, One Voice has a hotline that folks can call if they run into any issues on election day. And from there, they'll have someone assist them on, the next steps. But we do that because, like you said, Mississippi has one of the most restrictive voting laws, one of the most restrictive timelines. There's always something happening. And so we want to make sure that we're front and center when things are happening so that we can just assist who need right away. And that's what I mean by election protection.
So tell me some of the things.
And Arekia, if you have stuff.
Well, I like specifics. I'm a very concrete person. I'm the person that said, all right, tell me what you mean. When can I call you? I show up to vote. And what happens? When do I call?
Yeah. Yeah, that was a great explanation. I think a good example is, so I'm a cop. Actually, I'm a good example. So, hey, Lolita, that's Lolita. So I lived in South Jackson for quite some time. During the 2019 gubernatorial elections, my precinct of about however long I've been voting changed the day before the election. Like, somebody sent me a postcard, and if I wasn't doing civic engagement work, I wouldn't know like what that meant or care to even, you know what I'm saying? Like, that wouldn't be on the top of my priority list, right? But because I had the luxury, the privilege of not having so many responsibilities, and I could look at a piece of mail and be like, what is this? That's my new precinct. I was able to, like, that morning, the next morning, which was election day, drive to the new polling place. But when I got there, it was somebody's home. So if I call the election protection hotline, I'm able to call 1-888-601-VOTE, and Lolita or Courtney Body, they answer the phone, or a lawyer, they answer the phone for me, and they say, and I tell them, I've been voting in this place for however long. They sent me a postcard in the mail with a new voting location. I got there, and the address was somebody's home. What do I do? And so from then, they try to figure out, how to troubleshoot that on their end, or they send somebody out, or they redirect me and make sure that they update whatever information on their external site to make sure that whoever is in my district or voting in the place that I'm voting has better information about knowing where to go and where to vote. Similarly, if somebody is not on the, like, if my name isn't on the voter roll at my precinct that I believe I'm supposed to vote at, and like nobody can turn me around. You like have to allow me to vote affidavit, or provisional ballot, or whatever words you want to use. So like that type of stuff, I would call the election protection hotline to make sure that I'm well within my rights, or that, like I said, they'll send somebody out to make sure that I'm properly assisted. And One Voice, NAACP, and the folks who are part of the Civic Engagement Roundtable, us included, who Mississippi Votes included, have been doing that work for quite some time, and it's proven to be really, really helpful for Black folks and students who are voting, right? So if you think about a college student who is a student at the University of Southern Mississippi, there are 2 precincts on campus, and surely you would believe that the student would vote at either of those precincts, but you just never know where they have you located, on this end or the other end of the campus. And so having access to that type of hotline with people who are thoughtful about their engagement of the public, and want to make sure that people cast their ballot properly, and have the opportunity to do so, that tool, election protection, our hotline, is, very, very useful.
That kind of segues. You talked a little bit about y'all presence on university campuses, and I wanted to ask about your liaison program. Can you tell us a bit more about that? Like, how do you get it started, and how has the effect been with the campuses you're already set up at? Is that what you got it?
Yes.
We do that thing where we like look at each other
every time. And you're asking, how has the campus liaison program been for us in responses?
Yeah, the response, and I see there's other universities you want to add, right? So kind of tell us a little bit about that process, and those who may be interested in becoming a liaison for you guys, what they would need to do.
Absolutely, absolutely. So when Arekia became executive director in 2018, she actually expanded our youth civic engagement programs. So we have high school programs starting out, and we have college programs, college fellowships. And a few of those fellowships is the Democracy in Action Fellowship and the One Girl, One Vote. Democracy in Action Fellowship is geared towards current college students in the state of Mississippi to not only engage their peers and register to vote, but also holds political education forums, candidate questionnaires, candidate forums in the community around them. And so when we go and we engage the college students, one thing they do take to us is that we're actually there at their campus. You can say we're kind of close in age, but we can, of course, engage them by just relating to them and asking them what they want. And so from there is interest, right? And so from that interest, the young people really start moving themselves. And if somebody is interested in our Democracy in Action Fellowship, all they have to do is go to our website at www.msvotes.org/fellowships and apply for the Democracy in Action Fellowship. But we started by visiting each campus across the state just to engage. And we started talking to professors and teachers at those colleges and universities just to get their classrooms involved. We're in the classrooms, we're in the conversations. If they're having homecoming, we're there. Welcome week, we're there. And it's just really an ecosystem. And so it doesn't stop, because once, you have a certain amount of people interested, now they want to start their own campus chapter, and now they want to start mobilizing themselves. And eventually, once they graduate, come on and join the staff, Mississippi Vote staff. But the responses have been great. We have a presence on all main campus colleges, universities across the state. The young people really tell us what they want, and we do our best to implement it.
Yeah. We get to be their cool aunties.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mississippi has 17 colleges and universities.
Mm-hmm.
And as the programs director, Velvet has her work cut out for her, and has done a remarkable job at helping to not only make sure we have a student at each campus and a footprint on each campus, but really cultivating the leadership of our youth civic engagement coordinators and making sure that they feel empowered to be innovative, and whatever they want to do. Really, it's really on them. We have these statewide meetings with our high school students, and when they envision something, when they imagine something, we try to help troubleshoot it and we make it happen. But yeah, our college students and our Democracy in Action program has kind of been the lifeblood of what we do. And, we'd be remiss to not mention, on the screen here is Kian Williams, who was a student at Jackson State, and Terry Wells, who just graduated from law school. But those students remained involved up until, it was time for them to graduate. And Kian specifically, she and another one of her comrades from the Black Feminist Collective that I created at Jackson State, they spun off and created this fellowship at Mississippi Votes called One Girl, One Vote. And so it's an opportunity for young women and girls and female identifying folks and folks who, are gender nonconforming, who want to have their voice in center stage in our policy agenda. So One Girl, One Vote is led by Hannah Williams, who's a phenomenal historian, and who is our policy analyst. But they have these conversations around, like, what does it mean to start from a Black girl's fears and create a world that's safe for her through policy creation. And so that's the litmus test for how we think about civic engagement, for how we do our work, for how we engage with young people generally across the board, and how we think about community as a whole, and how we think about Black liberation.
That's
Black liberation, yes. Kimberly, got any follow-up questions?
Well, one of the things that I wanted to talk with you about is your Juneteenth celebration that is happening on June 19th here in Jackson on Ferris Street. For those of you who don't know what Juneteenth is, you should, because it's now has a federal holiday designation, and I'm going to ask you to Google it. But tell us a little bit about what you have going on, the times, how people can participate. Give us a rundown. And I'm going to go to Arekia.
Yeah, so we're excited to host Juneteenth this year. We hadn't done it since 2020, and we really were just co-signers of something that our student envisioned beyond the organization. So this year, we are trying something new. I mentioned our Up to Us campaign earlier. It's a 16-week grassroots mobilization campaign where in the first phase, we do a ton of voter education. Then we do voter registration in the second phase. In the third phase, we do a lot of GOTV and mobilization work via, digital media, whatever it is, however we can touch voters. And then that last phase is about election protection and getting out the vote, and partnering with some of our partners, like Black Voters Matter, like People's Advocacy Institute and Mississippi in Action, groups like that. And we're using Juneteenth to, talk more about the idea of Black resistance and the idea of the beauty and power of the Black vote, right? Like, where would we be in this country at this moment without Black people, without young people, and commemorating all that Juneteenth is. And I won't spoil it because Kim is right. You should Google it if you don't know what it is. But you know what? Actually, Juneteenth, yeah. I'm going to come back to that because I don't believe in giving people half information. I think we should actually explain it.
Okay, go with it.
Yeah. But so we plan to celebrate Juneteenth in the historic Fair Street district with the community, with all of the business on Fair Street, and our partners. We have a long list of vendors, a beautiful lineup of performers, including Dre Dice, who is a young artist in Mississippi, very talented and all about civic engagement, very understanding of our political climate, and is going to bless the stage. But moreover, we also want to celebrate Black fathers. It's Father's Day, and we want to make sure that we center folks who have fathered Black children in our community and uplift them and, love on them for a couple of hours. You know what I'm saying? So it's going to be so much fun. It's going to be family oriented. There's going to be some history. I'm going to get on the mic a couple of times and give some history lessons. I ain't going to be too boring, but I want people to be grounded in our why, and I also, like I said, want to make sure that the young children have a place in our day. So there's going to be face painting and what you call them, Velvet, jumping jacks.
Yeah, bounce houses.
Yep, you can tell I ain't got no kids. Bounce houses. I'm going to be in there with them. And just all kinds of things. Like Johnny T's is involved. They're going to make sure that our volunteers and our students from Jim Hill High School who are going to be performing are going to be fed. And some of our elders are going to be out there sharing their stories. And it's just going to be beautiful. And I'm excited about the work that Velvet has put into this and the imagination she's had in co-creating this with our field team, and our partnership with the AME Church. And so I believe that if you come to this celebration, you won't just be in the midst of like fun and food. You're going to get some political education. You might even register to vote, and heaven knows you're going to walk away as a volunteer because I'm going to call you.
So circle back. You said you don't believe in giving people half information. Come back.
Yeah. So I don't want to be the person, but so after emancipation, right? Black folks were supposed to be free, and they just were not. They didn't know that they were free in specifically Texas. And, Hannah can tell the story better than I can, but Juneteenth commemorates those events when the Union General arrived to Texas to inform the enslaved African-American people that, they had in fact been freed. And there was just this beautiful celebration of freedom and liberation and, the power that they didn't think they had being taken back in that moment of celebration. And and that is what this celebration is about. It's about, like I said earlier, Black resistance and all that it means to be the descendants of such a beautiful and rich history of Black folks in America.
You talked a little bit. Something you said struck me, and then I'll turn it over to Asia. You and I'm going to ask this question of Velvet. You talked a little bit about um, people, young people specifically, knowing what they want. Uh, what are you hearing from young people about reproductive health,
Yeah.
about student loans? What are things that they are saying back to you about the condition of their state, of their union?
Yeah. Um, sometimes, sometimes we have these conversations amongst ourselves, V and I, and even with our summer interns about, like, it just feels like we are not being honest with young people when we talk to them about,
Right.
if you vote, this is going to get better, right? And, if you register to vote, if you're a part of this process, like, it looks like this, that's just not real, because the truth is, this experiment of American democracy has failed us all. And our young people have challenged us, me specifically, over the years about, Mississippi votes shouldn't just be registering us to vote or turning us out to vote. You should provide a place where we can talk about these ideas about reproductive health and climate change, and, really foster an environment where we can get creative about the solutions, because frankly, like, government isn't answering our questions about our lives and what we believe is possible. And so I'm saying all that to say, young people want the ability to be creative in thinking about what's next outside of this current system of government. And the truth for us is that is possible. And we want to help envision and co-create that with you. And we have to be realistic about the tool that we have in front of us. Like, there's a such thing as sharpening the tool that you have and preparing to fight with the tools you want, right? But if we've learned anything, if we've learned anything in these 4 years of organizing together, Velvet and I, it's really, when you don't have a plan, when you can't clearly see what you envision, when you have a thought process but not a vision about how you execute and how you go about it, and you don't have, like, these alternative routes of how you get to where you're trying to go, like, things fail. So you have to have a plan A through B, well, Z, actually, A through Z, and naming that to say, if we're going to envision something new, we have to be prepared for plan A, B, C through Z. And we're trying to create an environment where we can do what we're doing right now, but we can also be very clear about how young people are envisioning their political home, or how they're envisioning what the next level of engagement at Mississippi Votes is going to be and going to look like. And so that might be a name change. That might be a color change in our logo. That might mean we do a lot of programming differently. That it means a lot of possibility. And we're open to that. We're not afraid of that. But yeah, young people want more, and our current systems don't allow for them to imagine.
Right. Yeah. I love what you said there, because it encompasses both practicality, but also freedom to grow. So you have to start at A, because this is where we are right now. But if y'all want us to get us somewhere else, then let's figure that out. But A is where we start, because this is what we have now. And we want to end up at D. We understand that, but it's the realism, but also the dream. And I think a lot of organizations either are the dream or the realism.
Yeah.
If they don't give you it's no, there's no combination of those two things.
Yeah. And, we've been honest with ourselves in the last couple of weeks as well, right? Like Mississippi Votes, for all its worth, on paper is a nonprofit. We are driven by movement, right? Our lens is very movement centered and very innovative and very creative. And those are our values. That's who we are at the core. And at the end of the day, dreaming beyond the system, the nonprofit that we are, requires us to be honest about the contradictions of that, requires us to be real about who we say we are versus who we want to be.
I love that. I had one more question. So I know we recently, had some redistricting of Mississippi's congressional districts, and so I just want to know what you guys thought about that, and what do voters need to know, and is Mississippi Votes offering any resources to keep the public aware and engaged of that, and their power in being aware of that?
Which one of us?
Go ahead, Velvet. Yeah, no, Velvet.
You said our opinion on redistricting. Our Mississippi Votes opinion.
Well, not so much your opinion, but with you guys being about civic engagement, what are you currently working on some resources to help the civic community understand what it means and their power in understanding what it means? And yeah, I just basically want to know how this affects your base and how you guys are working to prepare them to make them aware and what that means for their respective counties.
Yeah, so we actually, let me see. So first, to start off with, of course, how the map is drawn now is definitely just racist, right? To group majority Black community in one congressional district. And of course, we have Benny Thompson, but also it makes it a lot harder for a person of color to run in, the other congressional districts and actually win based on how it's set up. But we want to make sure that folks have tools. So that's one thing we're working on, is like make sure they have tools, knowing their power around the issue. And so Mississippi Votes, as y'all know, we're nonpartisan, right? And so we engage both aisles, and we've been having conversations as to how we need to organize in other congressional districts, really in every congressional district, because we believe that Mississippi can be a battleground state. We believe things can be more, in a way, equal depending on how we organize. But we haven't had the conversations around that and how to move those voters in those communities around the other congressional districts.
Yeah, I think it's important, Mississippi, while we are, one thing I always think about is you all are engaging, people who aren't registered to vote. Mississippi is approximately 40% African American, but that's a lot of, it's not just African American people ain't registered to vote. It's a lot of people not registered to vote that don't have enough information. It's a lot of young people of all stripes that are not registered to vote for a number of reasons, some of which are practical, some of which that I don't understand how it works, and some of which is I don't think I can make a difference. And I think Mississippi Votes and organizations like that are giving people an opportunity to vote however they are led to vote. But right now they're not even in the game. If you're not in the game, if you're not at the table, you don't know what's happening.
Yeah. And I think some of that is by design. Like we talked a little bit about the disenfranchisement crimes earlier. That's 11% of our population, regardless of race, right? 11% of Mississippians generally are disenfranchised. Wow. That's over 230,000 people who could otherwise vote, right? And many of those folks have already served their time. not to mention the 16% of Black folks who are disenfranchised, and, you know, Black men who are disenfranchised. And so I think when we have this conversation about civic engagement, about people being in the game, we have to be honest about, you know, who is at the table making the rules about the game. And so for us, it's become more and more important to, you know, have, conversations with young people about running for office, and also having conversations with young people about what it means to govern. Right. So it's one thing for us to win a popularity contest, and one thing for us to become, you know, the councilman of our ward or whatever. But it's another thing for us to understand the very real aspect of what it means to balance a budget, what it means to govern, what it means to be responsible to a people. And those are all things that we're committed to working on, and all the things that we've been trying to build out in our programming. But it's going to take more than just the 10 folks that work at Mississippi Votes to envision that. And so we've been, you know, obviously inviting more and more young people into our network, but also community. Like, we've been trying to refine our methodology of like how we really engage with folks. And so we need people who are messengers like y'all. People read MFP, people listen to the podcast, to continue to put out stuff that says like, this is where your precinct is, and this is how they changed it, and this is what this means, and this is how this impacts you, and these are the people you should be connected to, because that inevitably changes how people, again, see themselves as part of this process. Yeah, it's one thing to be without formula, but it's another thing to understand why you without formula.
I love that. And everything you said was really leading to my next question. I was going to ask you, what do you need from us, the media? You know, and you kind of answered that question. But anything specific that, you know, and I was thinking earlier, because when I look at y'all's website, you know, I think Kimberly hit on this too. I know me personally, I am not the most civically engaged. I don't know all the positions and all the responsibilities of our, you know, state representatives and all that. But I think there's some way the media can help collaborate with that to help us kind of fill out those profiles for the candidates, right? Because we have so many positions and so many things. And I love how your website, you know, has their picture, has their goals, has their history, their education. And I think like we could probably collaborate a lot more, not just us, but other media around the state to feel to have that like a cheat sheet, right, for all of our representatives, for all of our state officials. And so, but you kind of answered my question, so I just wanted to kind of add that idea on how I would love to collaborate with y'all to make sure we get all of our voters and all of our citizens what they need to make an informed vote. And like you said, to govern themselves.
Yeah.
It's very important.
Yeah.
Well, this has been an amazing conversation. Thank you both so much for joining us this evening. We're going to make it our annual, our annual tradition. And then maybe we can also be in studio, and then we can go have a little nosh after. Maybe we can be in studio. If we get a studio, I have to ask our producer how we do that. So next week we have the amazing David Ray Morris, and he is going to talk about his latest projects, which include a book, his father's Willie Morris, and he's going to, there it is. His latest book is Letters from His Father, which I got a little sneak peek last night, inside information. And these are some of the most fascinating letters I have ever heard about. And I love books that are epistolatory books that are letters from one person to another person, because I think you learn all the tea. We're super excited. You get all the tea. Super excited about that. We also want to remind people that Donna Ladd's 5th Shut Up and Write Talk is on June 28th, and that is for our MFP VIP members. And this is how you become a member. If you donate any amount in 2021, you're a charter member. And if you donate at least $10 a month, you get access to all the previous talks. This is about Donna talks about nonfiction narrative writing. We also have amazing conversations with everyone from Anjanou Ellis to Stuart Stevens to Tina Clark, one of our Mississippi's own Grammy award-winning producers. So you get access to everything we've done if you start today, like you can go back, just catch up. You have, it's like, you know, when you have a podcast you find, and they have 300 episodes, and you have all this listening material for for weeks and weeks and weeks. We have all that for you. We have most things. We have the audio and the video, so you can listen in your car. So we'd love for you to join that, and you can join in that. Again, that's $10 a month or $100 a year annually, and you get access to all these great opportunities and events. We are so. Oh wait, yeah, y'all put the church ring up. Okay, go.
Hey, yes, I just wanted to uplift to everybody our social media handles. So you can follow us on Facebook and on YouTube, Mississippi Votes, spelled out. On Twitter and Instagram, you can follow us at MS Votes. And don't forget this Sunday, our Juneteenth event is from 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. on Farish Street. And, you know, like Arekia said, we'll have plenty of entertainment. Vendors will be there, food trucks. So definitely come out and have fun. We'll wrap off a few Father's Day baskets in the mix.
Thank you so much. And to the rest of our viewing public, we look forward to seeing you next week. And thanks again, Arekia and Velvet, for giving us all the updated information on voting in Mississippi. We appreciate you guys.
Thanks for having me.
Yep.